Echoes of yesterday. The rhythmic beeping of monitors had become so familiar to Dr. Meera Kapoor that she barely registered them anymore. 7 years into her career as a neurologist at Horizon Medical Center, the hospital soundscape was her natural habitat. Her colleagues often joked that she was married to the neurology department, a statement not entirely untrue. After the heartbreak that had defined her final year of medical school, Meera had channeled all her energy into her profession, building walls around her personal life that few could penetrate. "Dr. Kapoor, your last patient canceled. You're free to go home early," Nurse Prisha said, popping her head into Meera's office. Meera glanced at her watch, 6:18 p.m., and nodded gratefully. "Thanks, Prisha. I might actually see daylight for once." The spring evening welcomed her as she stepped outside, the setting sun casting long shadows across the hospital parking lot. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. Expecting a call from the hospital, she was surprised to see her mother's name on the screen. "Mom? Is everything okay?" Jodi Kapoor's voice trembled on the other end. "Meera, it's your father. He's been in an accident. They've taken him to Memorial Hospital." Meera's heart clenched. Despite their estrangement, she hadn't spoken to Rajiv Kapoor in nearly a decade. The news hit her harder than expected. "Is he... How bad is it?" "The doctors say he's stable, but he's asking for you." The request surprised Meera. Her father had made no attempt to contact her since the explosive argument that had torn their family apart after her mother's divorce. The same argument that had indirectly contributed to her breakup with Vikram Malhotra, the man she had once planned to marry. "I'll be there in 20 minutes, Meera said, already changing direction toward her car. Memorial Hospital stood across town, its modern glass facade gleaming in the dusk light. As Meera navigated the familiar hospital protocols, showing her medical ID, inquiring at the reception desk, memories of her time with Vikram resurfaced. They had been inseparable during their medical school years, planning a future together until family drama and misunderstandings had driven a wedge between them. "Room 307, the receptionist directed, breaking Meera's reverie. The elevator ride to the 3rd floor gave Meera time to compose herself. She hadn't prepared for this reunion with her father, let alone the emotions it would dredge up. The doors opened with a soft ping, and Meera stepped into the corridor. She nearly collided with a tall figure exiting a nearby room. "I'm sorry. I wasn't..." The words died in her throat as she looked up into familiar amber eyes. "Meera?" Vikram Malhotra stood before her, the shock on his face mirroring her own. He looked different, more mature, with subtle lines around his eyes and a closely trimmed beard that suited his angular face. But the warmth in his expression, quickly masked by surprise, was achingly familiar. "Vikram," she managed, her voice barely above a whisper. "What are you doing here?" He seemed equally stunned. "My father was brought in after a car accident this afternoon. I just arrived from Bangalore. I've been working there for the past 3 years." "Car accident?" Meera repeated, the coincidence dawning on her. "My father was in an accident, too." Understanding flickered across Vikram's face. "Wait, was your father in a silver Audi?" "The one that collided with my father's car on Evergreen Road?" The hospital corridor seemed to spin around Meera. "They were in the same accident? But why would they..." A nurse emerged from room 307, interrupting their conversation. "Dr. Kapoor, your father's asking for you." She glanced between Meera and Vikram, noticing their tense exchange. "Oh, you've met Dr. Malhotra already? I was just telling him that his father and yours were together when the accident happened. Apparently, they were coming from a business meeting." "Business meeting?" Meera and Vikram echoed in unison. The nurse nodded, oblivious to their confusion. "That's what they told the paramedics. Said they've been business partners for years." She continued down the hallway, leaving Meera and Vikram staring at each other in bewildered silence. "Business partners?" Vikram's voice was low. "My father never mentioned knowing yours." "Neither did mine," Meera replied, her mind racing. "In fact, I thought they'd never even met." The hospital corridor suddenly felt like the intersection of past and present, where the echoes of yesterday were about to reveal truths that would change everything. Beneath white walls, the sterile corridor of Memorial Hospital seemed to shrink around Meera and Vikram as they processed the nurse's casual revelation. Business partners? The notion was absurd. Neither had ever mentioned knowing the other's father, let alone working with them. Yet here they stood, brought together by an accident that suddenly felt less like coincidence and more like fate's heavy hand. "I should see my father," Mira finally said, breaking the tense silence between them. Vikram nodded, running a hand through his dark hair, a nervous habit she remembered well. "I'll check on mine too." "But Mira—" He hesitated, his voice softening. "Can we talk afterward? I think we need to understand what's happening here." With a reluctant nod, Mira turned toward room 307. Each step toward her father's room felt heavier than the last, her mind crowded with questions that had nothing to do with medicine. Rajiv Kapoor looked smaller than she remembered, his once commanding presence diminished by the hospital bed and the bandage wrapped around his head. His eyes, the same deep brown as Mira's, widened when she entered. "Mira," he breathed, his voice rough with emotion. "You came." She approached cautiously, maintaining the emotional distance that had defined their relationship for years. "Mom said you asked for me. How are you feeling?" "Like I've been hit by a car," he attempted to joke, then winced. Quite literally, as it happens. Mira's professional instincts took over as she checked the monitors beside his bed. "Concussion, broken ribs?" she asked, noting his labored breathing. "Among other things." He watched her carefully. "You look well. Successful." "I am," she replied simply, unsure how to navigate this fragile conversation. Then, unable to contain her curiosity, "Dad, were you really with Aaron Malhotra when the accident happened? Have you been working with him?" The question visibly startled him. His heart monitor registered a slight increase in his pulse. "You've seen Vikram, then," he stated rather than asked. "He's here visiting his father. We literally just ran into each other." Mira crossed her arms. "Why didn't you ever tell me you knew his family?" Rajiv closed his eyes briefly. "It's complicated, Beta. Arun and our history goes back decades. Before you were even born." "That doesn't explain the secrecy," Mira pressed. "Or why you'd hide a business relationship with the father of the man I was going to marry. Perhaps that's exactly why," came a voice from the doorway. Mira turned to find an elegant woman in her early 60s standing there, Vikram's mother, Deepa Malhotra. 7 years had added silver streaks to her dark hair, but her posture remained regal, her gaze penetrating. "Mrs. Malhotra," Mira acknowledged. "Surprised, Dr. Kapoor?" Deepa replied with a sad smile. "It seems our families are destined to collide, one way or another." Down the hall in room 315, Vikram sat beside his father's bed, struggling to reconcile the composed businessman he knew with the anxious patient before him. Arun Malhotra had suffered a broken leg and several lacerations, but the doctors assured him that his father would recover fully. "I didn't want you to find out this way," Arun admitted, grimacing as he adjusted his position. "About Rajiv and me." Vikram leaned forward. "Find out what exactly?" "That you've apparently been business partners with the father of the woman I nearly married? The same woman whose family you claimed was beneath our station?" Arun flinched at his son's direct words. "It wasn't like that." "Then what was it like?" Vikram demanded. "Because I remember clearly how you discouraged me from proposing to Mira, how you said her family wouldn't fit with ours." "Was that all a lie?" His father's silence was damning. "We were trying to protect you both," Aaron finally said. "From what?" Before his father could answer, a nurse entered with Dr. Harish Sharma, the attending physician handling both Kapoor and Malhotra cases. "Mr. Malhotra, we need to run additional tests," Dr. Sharma explained, reviewing the chart. "And actually, I'm glad both families are here. There's something peculiar in the blood work from both patients that I'd like to discuss." Vikram's medical training alerted him immediately. "What kind of peculiarity?" Dr. Sharma hesitated. "It's probably nothing, but some markers in their genetic profiles have raised questions. Given their age and condition, I'd like to run a more comprehensive panel." He glanced between Vikram and Arun. "It's just procedural, especially considering they're business partners. We want to ensure we're not missing anything in their medical histories." After the doctor left, Vikram confronted his father again. What aren't you telling me? And don't say nothing. I can see it in your face. Aaron sighed deeply. Find Deepa. She's probably with Rajiv by now. The four of us need to talk. In the hospital cafeteria an hour later, Mira stared into her untouched coffee. The fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across the nearly empty space, matching her mood. Vikram sat across from her, equally silent. 7 years, she finally murmured. 7 years, believing our relationship fell apart because of normal family differences. Only to discover our families have been entangled all along, Vikram added bitterly. A young nurse approached their table carrying a folder. Dr. Kapoor, Dr. Malhotra, Dr. Sharma asked me to give you this. She handed them the folder. He thought, given your medical backgrounds, you'd want to see the test results directly. After she left, Mira opened the folder with trepidation. She scanned the pages, her medical training allowing her to interpret the data quickly. Then she gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. What? Vikram asked, alarmed. What is it? Wordlessly, she slid the folder toward him. Vikram's expression shifted from confusion to disbelief as he read. This can't be right, he whispered, looking up at Mira. It's saying that our fathers share significant genetic markers, Mira finished for him, her voice hollow. They're not just business partners, Vikram. According to this, they're likely half-brothers. The hospital's white walls seemed to close in around them, harboring secrets that had shaped their lives without their knowledge, secrets that were only beginning to emerge beneath these sterile corridors where truth, like disease, could no longer remain dormant. Unraveling threads. The private hospital garden was deserted at 9 in the evening, illuminated only by scattered pathway lights and the glow from surrounding windows. Mira and Vikram sat on a stone bench, the medical file open between them, its contents transforming everything they thought they knew about their families. Half-brothers, Mira repeated, still processing the revelation. My father and yours related by blood. How is this possible? Vikram ran his fingers along the edge of the genetic report. The markers don't lie, Mira. The question is whether they knew. They must have, she replied, thinking back to her father's reaction. Remember how uncomfortable they both looked when we mentioned their business partnership? This explains why they've been so secretive. A cool evening breeze rustled through the garden's manicured shrubs as they sat in contemplative silence. 7 years ago, they had been medical students in love, planning a future that disintegrated when their families opposed the match. Now the true reasons for that opposition were beginning to surface, each revelation more startling than the last. We need to confront them, Vikram finally said, closing the file. Together. When they returned to Rajiv's room, they found both fathers had been moved to a shared recovery suite, a coincidence that now seemed laden with irony. Deepa Malhotra sat between the two beds, her elegant posture belying the tension in the air. A distinguished older man in a crisp suit stood by the window, his expression grave. Uncle Jaidev, Vikram acknowledged, surprised to see his father's lawyer present. Mira glanced between the assembled adults, noting their solemn expressions. You already know why we're here, don't you? Rajiv exchanged a look with Arun before addressing his daughter. Dr. Sharma called us about the test results. He was concerned about the implications. Implications? Mira's voice rose slightly. You're half-brothers and you never told us. That's not an implication. That's a life-altering fact you both concealed. Jaidev Patel cleared his throat. Perhaps I can provide some context. I've been the Malhotra family lawyer for 40 years, and I've known about this situation from the beginning. He gestured for Mira and Vikram to sit. Arun and Rajiv share a father, the late Surinder Malhotra. However, only Arun was born within marriage. Rajiv was the result of a different relationship. An affair, Mira translated bluntly. Yes, Jaidev confirmed. Surinder had a long-term relationship with Rajiv's mother, Kavita. She worked as his executive assistant at Malhotra Industries in the 1970s. Rajiv's voice was strained as he continued the story. My mother raised me alone, telling me my father had died. It wasn't until I was in university that I discovered the truth, that my father was very much alive and had another family across town. I had no idea about Rajiv until my 25th birthday, Arun added, shifting painfully in his bed. My father confessed everything and asked for my help in making amends. He'd been secretly providing financial support to Rajiv and Kavita for years, but wanted to acknowledge his son more openly. Deepa's knuckles whitened as she gripped her handbag. The scandal nearly destroyed Malhotra Industries. Surinder's reputation, our family name, everything was at risk. So you buried it, Vikram concluded, the pieces falling into place. You created a business partnership as cover for your actual relationship. Jaydev nodded. It seemed the most practical solution. Surinder established a trust that would benefit both sons equally after his death. On paper, they were business associates managing shared investments. Mira turned to her father. But what does any of this have to do with Vikram and me? Why keep us apart? The room fell silent, the beeping of medical monitors suddenly deafening. Rajiv and Arun exchanged another glance, a lifetime of complicated brotherhood evident in their wordless communication. Because, Rajiv finally said, the Malhotra family trust contains a specific clause, one that Surinder included without consulting anyone. If Arun's children marry into my family line, both branches forfeit their inheritance. Vikram stood abruptly. You separated us because of money? No, Arun protested weakly. Not just money. The trust controls ownership of Malhotra Industries, the company that employs thousands. If triggered, that clause would force liquidation of significant assets, potentially destroying everything Surinder built. We thought we were protecting you both, Deepa added softly, and preserving your grandfather's legacy. Mira felt her chest tighten with anger and grief. So instead, you manufactured conflicts between our families. You, she looked at her father, suddenly opposed my medical career and insisted I study business instead, knowing I wouldn't. And you, turning to Arun, convinced Vikram that my family was socially unsuitable. We never expected you two to meet in medical school, Rajiv admitted. By then it was too late. We panicked. Vikram's voice was dangerously calm. You deliberately sabotaged our relationship. You manipulated us like pieces on a chessboard. Jaydev cleared his throat again. There's more you should know. He opened his briefcase and removed an aged document. I've recently been reviewing Surinder's original trust documents and discovered something significant. The marriage restriction has a time limit. It expired on the 25th anniversary of Surinder's death. Which was? Mira asked. 3 years ago, Jaydev replied quietly. The implications hung in the air between them. For 4 years, their separation had been necessary to protect the family business and legacy. But for the past 3 years, it had been entirely pointless. As twilight deepened outside the hospital windows, Mira and Vikram stood together, united in their newfound understanding of the complex web of family secrets that had entangled them. The truth was finally unraveling, thread by painful thread, revealing a pattern neither had imagined possible. Healing Wounds dawn broke over Memorial Hospital, casting long shadows through the Venetian blinds of the small consultation room where Mira had spent most of the night reviewing her father's and Aaron's medical charts. After the emotional revelations of the previous evening, she had retreated into the familiar territory of medicine, seeking clarity in clinical data rather than family drama. You haven't slept, Vikram observed, entering with 2 cups of coffee. The dark circles under his eyes matched hers. Mira accepted the coffee gratefully. Neither have you. I was talking to Dr. Sharma about their treatment plan. He sat across from her, his movements betraying his exhaustion. Both should recover fully, physically at least. Physically, Mira echoed, the word hanging between them. The emotional recovery, for all of them, would be far more complex. 3 days had passed since the accident that had unexpectedly reunited them. 3 days of navigating not only their father's medical needs, but also the aftershocks of decades-old family secrets. They had established an uneasy truce, working together to coordinate care while processing their shared history. I keep thinking about what we lost, Vikram said quietly, staring into his coffee. 7 years, Mira. Our entire residency periods, the beginnings of our careers. All those milestones we once planned to share. Mira felt the familiar ache of those lost years. I specialized in neurology because of that last fight we had, she admitted. You said I was afraid to deal with emotion, that I retreated into logic when things got difficult. So I chose the most logical specialty I could find, the brain, with all its beautiful, predictable patterns. A small smile touched Vikram's lips. I went into emergency medicine for exactly the opposite reason. I wanted the chaos, the adrenaline, anything to distract from losing you. The confession hung in the air between them, a fragile bridge across the chasm of their separation. Dr. Harish Sharma's arrival interrupted their moment of vulnerability. "Good morning, doctors," he greeted them, his kind eyes taking in their exhausted appearances. "I've just examined your fathers. Mr. Malhotra's leg is healing well, and Mr. Kapoor's concussion symptoms are subsiding. If all continues as expected, they could be discharged within 48 hours. Thank you," Mira said, professional courtesy masking her mixed feelings about this development. The hospital had become a neutral zone, a place where the past and present could coexist without immediate decisions about the future. After Dr. Sharma left, Vikram leaned forward. "We need to talk about what happens when they leave here. This discovery doesn't just affect our past, Mira. It changes everything moving forward, too." "I know," she acknowledged, finally meeting his gaze directly. "They're not just our fathers anymore, they're brothers, which makes our families permanently connected whether we want that or not. And us, what are we now?" The question encompassed far more than their current status. It reached back to what they had been, what they had lost, and what they might still become. Before Mira could answer, Nurse Prisha, who, by coincidence, had transferred from Horizon Medical Center to assist with the increased patient load at Memorial, appeared at the door. "Dr. Kapoor, your mother is here. And Dr. Malhotra, your sister Tanvi just arrived from London. More family members, more complications." Mira stood, smoothing her rumpled clothes. "We should go meet them." "Wait!" Vikram caught her hand, the first time he had touched her in 7 years. The contact sent an electric current through her tired body. "Before we face everyone else, I need to know if there's anything left between us worth salvaging." Mira looked down at their joined hands. "I don't know," she answered honestly. "What I do know is that I'm not the same person you loved back then. And you're not the same either." "No," he agreed, "we're not. But maybe that's not a bad thing." In the hospital garden that afternoon, family dynamics continued to evolve. Jyoti Kapoor, Mira's mother, sat stiffly on a bench, clearly uncomfortable being near her ex-husband and the Malhotra family. Tanvi Malhotra, Vikram's younger sister who had been in boarding school during most of his relationship with Mira, observed everyone with the analytical gaze she had developed as a corporate attorney. "So let me understand this correctly," Tanvi said, breaking an awkward silence. "Dad and Uncle Rajiv, yes, I'm calling him that now, are half-brothers. Grandfather had a secret second family. And you two," she nodded toward Mira and Vikram, "were in love but got manipulated into breaking up because of an inheritance clause that expired 3 years ago anyway." "That about sums it up," Vikram confirmed. "And nobody thought to hire a good lawyer to review that clause before destroying two people's happiness?" Tanvi's legal mind was clearly offended by the oversight. "Tanvi," Deepa cautioned. "No, Mom, she's right," Vikram interrupted. Everyone was so focused on preserving grandfather's legacy that they never questioned whether his conditions were fair or even legally sound. Rajiv, seated in a wheelchair beside Arun's, spoke up. "You're right. We were wrong, all of us. We made choices out of fear rather than love." "Fear of what, exactly?" Jyoti asked, her first contribution to the conversation. "Losing money, status, the precious Malhotra reputation." "All of those things," Arun admitted. "But mostly fear of change, of acknowledging that families aren't always what they appear to be on paper." As the older generation continued their tentative reconciliation, Mira excused herself, needing space to process. She found a secluded corner of the garden where a small fountain created white noise that muffled the hospital sounds. Vikram joined her minutes later, respecting her space by sitting on a separate bench. Tanvi always did cut to the heart of matters. Mira smiled despite herself. I like her directness. I wish I'd had the chance to know her better. You still could, he suggested quietly. The implication hung between them, that there might be a future where their families intertwined in healthy ways, rather. Then through secrecy and manipulation, I kept all your letters, Mira confessed suddenly. The ones you sent during that first year after we broke up. I never opened them, but I couldn't throw them away either. Vikram looked surprised. I thought you'd returned them all. I did, officially. But I made photocopies first. She gave a self-deprecating laugh. Pathetic, right? No, he said softly. I kept the recording of your final voice message on my phone for 3 years. Sometimes I'd just listen to your voice, even though your words were breaking my heart. The admission cracked something open between them. A vulnerability neither had allowed themselves in years. We were collateral damage in a family war we didn't even know was happening, Mira said. And now we have a choice, Vikram finished for her. To remain casualties or to heal. Not just ourselves, but maybe our families too. As afternoon faded into evening, Dr. Sharma approached with clipboard in hand. We have the final test results for both patients, he informed them. Everything looks stable, but there's something else you should know. He hesitated, his professional demeanor momentarily uncertain. The genetic analysis we ran shows another anomaly, one unrelated to their fraternal relationship. Mira straightened, medical concerns overtaking personal ones. What kind of anomaly? Both men show early markers for a hereditary form of cardiomyopathy, Dr. Sharma explained. It's manageable with proper medication and monitoring, but it's something they'll need to address long-term, and he looked between Mira and Vikram. It's something both of you should be tested for as well, given the hereditary nature. The diagnosis, another thing binding their families together, seemed almost poetic in its timing. As Dr. Sharma explained the treatment options, Vikram reached for Mira's hand again. This time she didn't pull away. The wounds of their past were deep, but in this moment of shared concern for their father's health, for their family's future, the first genuine threads of healing began to take root. New beginnings, 6 weeks after the accident that had changed everything. Mira stood in the doorway of her childhood home, observing the scene before her with a mixture of disbelief and cautious hope. In the living room, Rajiv and Arun sat opposite each other at the chessboard that had belonged to their father, Surinder Malhotra. They moved pieces with the comfortable rhythm of siblings who had spent a lifetime together, rather than brothers who had only recently acknowledged their relationship publicly. Check, Rajiv announced, moving his bishop. Arun frowned at the board. You always were ruthless with that piece. I learned from watching you play Dad, Rajiv replied. The statement matter of fact rather than accusatory. Mira marveled at how quickly language had evolved between them. Our father instead of your father. Family stories exchanged and expanded to include perspectives from both households. The walls between the Kapoor and Malhotra families hadn't exactly crumbled, but doors and windows had definitely opened. The doorbell rang, interrupting Mira's reflections. She opened it to find Vikram and Tanvi carrying dessert boxes from the patisserie near Horizon Medical Center. Sorry we're late, Vikram apologized. Emergency department was chaotic this morning. And I got caught on a conference call with Tokyo, Tanvi added, handing Mira the pastries. Family dinner still happening? In full force, Mira confirmed, stepping aside to let them enter. Mom and Deepa Auntie are in the kitchen debating the proper way to make biryani. Vikram raised an eyebrow. And there hasn't been bloodshed? Surprisingly, no. They found common ground in critiquing the restaurant version we ordered last week. This Sunday dinner had become something of a tradition over the past month, an attempt to rebuild connections between their intertwined families. The first gathering had been strained, full of awkward silences and carefully navigated conversations. But each week had grown easier as they all adjusted to their new reality. In the kitchen, Jyoti and Deepa worked side by side, their initial frostiness having mellowed into a respectful cooperation. They would never be best friends. Too much history stood between them. But they had found a way forward for the sake of their children. "Dinner's ready," Jyoti announced, carrying a steaming dish to the table. As everyone gathered around, Meera found herself seated beside Vikram, their shoulders nearly touching. The proximity no longer felt as charged with tension as it once had. Over the past weeks, they had cautiously rebuilt a foundation of friendship, taking slow, deliberate steps rather than rushing back into romance. "Before we eat," Aaron said, standing with some effort, his legs still healing, "I have an announcement." He placed a thick folder in the center of the table. Jaydev has finalized the restructuring of Malhotra Industries and the family trust. The table fell silent, memories of how the trust had once torn them apart still fresh. "As equal shareholders," Arun continued, nodding to Rajiv, "my brother and I have removed all restrictive clauses regarding marriage and inheritance. The company will be held in a new structure that ensures stability while allowing each family branch to determine their own paths." "What does that mean exactly?" Tanvi asked, the lawyer in her seeking precision. "It means," Rajiv explained, "that no one's personal choices will ever again be constrained by financial consequences. Not yours, not Vikram's, not Meera's. The implications hung in the air, acknowledged but not directly stated. Later, after dinner had been eaten and conversations had flowed more easily than anyone might have expected, Meera and Vikram escaped to the rooftop terrace where they had once spent countless evenings during medical school. The city lights spread before them, a carpet of stars mirroring the sky above. Meera leaned against the railing, feeling the cool night air against her face. "Your cardiologist appointment is Tuesday, right?" Vikram asked, joining her at the railing. Meera nodded. They had both been tested for the cardiomyopathy markers their fathers carried. Vikram's results had come back negative. Meera was still waiting. "I'm not worried," she said, and realized she meant it. "Whatever comes, I can handle it." "We can handle it," Vikram corrected gently. The subtle shift from I to we didn't escape her notice. "Vikram, we've been taking things slowly for a reason. My test results shouldn't change that approach." "They won't," he assured her. "But they also won't change how I feel about you, how I've always felt, even during the years we were apart." Meera turned to face him fully, studying the familiar contours of his face, older now, more defined but still essentially Vikram. "We're different people than we were 7 years ago." "Yes," he agreed. "And that's precisely why I think we have a real chance now. We're not those idealistic medical students anymore, Meera. We've lived separate lives, built careers, faced disappointments. We know who we are outside of us." "And who are we inside of us?" she asked softly. Instead of answering immediately, Vikram reached into his pocket and withdrew a folded piece of paper. "I found this while clearing out my apartment last week. It's from back then." Meera unfolded the paper to find a list in her own handwriting. "Why Vikram Malhotra is perfect, and perfectly annoying." It had been a joke between them during their second year of medical school, a playful compilation of his traits, both endearing and irritating. "Number 3 made me laugh," Vikram said, pointing to the item. "Always believes there's a solution to every problem, even when there clearly isn't." Meera smiled. "You were relentlessly optimistic." "I still am," he admitted, "especially about us." He took her hands in his, the gesture reminiscent of how they had stood on this very terrace when he had first told her he loved her nearly a decade ago. "I'm not proposing we pick up exactly where we left off," Vikram clarified. "That wouldn't honor who we've become or what we've been through. But I am proposing we keep moving forward, together." The city hummed below them, lives continuing in countless apartments and houses across the landscape. In one of those homes, their families, once divided by secrets and fear, were sharing coffee and conversation. The past couldn't be erased, but perhaps it could be incorporated into a new narrative. "I'd like that," Meera said finally. "Moving forward together." Vikram's smile illuminated his face in the dim terrace light. "I was hoping you'd say that." As they returned downstairs to rejoin their families, Meera felt a sense of something she hadn't experienced in years, not just the rekindling of an old love, but the emergence of a new understanding. Their unexpected reunion had begun in a hospital where physical healing took place, but the deeper healing of hearts and families was only now truly beginning. In the living room, Rajiv looked up as they entered. Something in their expressions must have communicated the shift between them, because he exchanged a meaningful glance with Aaron. The brothers, who had once conspired to keep Meera and Vikram apart, now shared a different secret: the quiet satisfaction of seeing wounds begin to heal across generations. "Everything okay?" Jyoti asked, noting their extended absence. "Yes," Meera replied, a genuine smile spreading across her face as Vikram's hand found hers. "Everything is just beginning to be okay." Outside the window, the first stars of evening emerged against the deepening blue sky. Not endpoints of light, but rather beacons illuminating new paths forward. For Meera and Vikram, for the Kapoors and the Malhotras, the unexpected reunion that had begun in crisis had transformed into something none of them could have anticipated: a second chance not just at love, but at family itself.